Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Conversations with Coaches podcast. I'm your host, Kevin, and today I have the pleasure of talking with Karl Pontau. I've already had the pleasure of talking with Karl. I can already tell this will be tempting for this one to go long, but we'll try to keep it as tight and concise as possible. Karl is the owner of Squash and Stretch Productions. He helps purpose-driven entrepreneurs attract more of their best clients with engaging, empathetic stories. He beat 2 brain tumors when he was 15, thanks to the help of his friends, family, community, and medical team. It's why he's so committed to helping others. Karl, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad that you're here in a general sense, and I'm glad that you're here today with me right now.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on the show, and I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, let's begin at the beginning, what I like to sometimes think of or call your superhero origin story as a coach. How did you first discover maybe that you already were, or realize that you wanted to be a coach? And then how did you go from that realization in your life to the business that you have today? And obviously, I'm sure you're triumphing with help over a serious medical condition in your early years is a part of that. So you can speak on that if you'd like. But yeah, I'm always very curious about how coaches find themselves and find their power and purpose.
Sure. So I can tell you kind of my origin, my why story, and then that kind of leads into the coaching part. So can I tell you that story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So I've been an artist my entire life. I grew up drawing, painting, sculpting, big Legos kid. And I got my passion for storytelling from my dad. He's a really good storyteller. And I knew I wanted to study animation when I saw the first Toy Story film. I was like, ooh, I gotta do that. That's so cool. And then beginning in 2002, I started to feel like something wasn't quite right with me physically. I'd been a competitive swimmer my whole life, so I knew what I was supposed to feel like. And it wasn't like, oh, my shoulder kind of hurts. It was like a general blah feeling. But by August, they still hadn't figured out what was wrong with me. And I had lost 50 pounds, had sunken cheeks and eyes. I was really pale, started to get really bad headaches. And so my parents took me for an MRI up in Walnut Creek. And we were waiting around for another appointment when my pediatrician called and said he's going to drive up from Pleasanton to come talk with us. And we saw him walking up with this big envelope in his hands. You could tell he'd been crying. He brought us into a little side meeting room. I remember I was sitting knee to knee with him in this big U-shaped chair with really high armrests, kind of leaning forward towards him, when he pulled out the results of the MRI and told me, Karl, you have 2 brain tumors. And it felt like I got punched in the chest. I actually moved backwards in my chair. And for the next 2 weeks, everything sounded like the adults from Peanuts, kind of wah, 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 because never had the flu, never broken any major bones, never been stung by a bee. I'm pretty sure I've never been bitten by a mosquito. So to get brain tumor diagnosis at 15 years old was a complete sucker punch out of nowhere. But I got so much help from friends and family, and my high school adjusted my schedule, got me a tutor so I could still graduate on time, and people I barely knew were giving food and gifts and other support. So it really inspired me to want to give back and help as many people as I could, because I'd probably be dead if it wasn't for all the help that I got. Yeah. And then in undergraduate school, as I was studying animation, there was a big student digital art and design competition I participated in, with a big screening at the end of like 1,000 people in this big auditorium. I knew maybe 10 people in the room. But when everyone laughed at the joke in my animation, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. I can connect with people and have a bigger impact with animation and storytelling. So after grad school, I started my company. And we tell exceptional stories for exceptional impact, empowering tech, biotech, healthcare, professional services companies to build stronger connections with their best clients using storytelling and animation. Because no matter whether business is B2C, B2B, even B2G, they're all really H to H, which is human to human, and humans tell stories. And so by helping those sort of companies, more people in the world to get their lives improved, our clients' businesses better, we get a happy client, everyone wins. And it's a way for me to have a bigger positive impact on the world around me. And that's why I do what I do. And I started doing the animation stuff, and I realized after talking with so many professionals that were interested in animation, but it's such a big investment to do right for a lot of companies. And so I realized that they still need help telling the story. The real value from the animation is not the animation itself, but it's the way it can tell a story clearly and concisely and really in an engaging way with the visuals. So I realized that I could still deliver value by coaching people on how to be better storytellers. And so I basically extended off from the animation services to also include coaching. And I kind of have been pivoting to that more and more, because there's just such a huge gap in what works when it comes to messaging and marketing and branding and business communications, and what it takes to build strong relationships with people, and what most people actually do, or what they use for their businesses. And I focus on businesses with storytelling because there's more tangible ROI with, I want to get more clients, but the real goal is if people in general become better at connecting with people in a business sense, they'll probably become better at connecting with people in a personal sense, and it'll just have more human to human connections in the world in general. I think that's something that, like, the world is sorely lacking in empathy these days. So the more of that I can produce and through the framework of helping people's businesses, then I can have the sort of impact I want to have on the world with my life. And so that's really what drives my business, and the coaching and the animation parts.
Yeah, I love this. It's obviously a little bit more of a dramatic turn given what you went through at such a young age
Yeah.
with the brain tumors. But like it's such a common transition for all these uncommon coaches I get to talk to and meet, where there's just like this moment or a series of moments, and a moment can be a fraction of a second. It could be 10 years. Sometimes moments last as long as a moment needs to last, but
Yeah.
they have this moment in their lives where they realize that they have this very unique and personal to them experience and a passion that goes along with it in some way that maybe at that point where it first gets discovered is a little unformed, but there's definitely a clear intention. It's like, I want to give back. I want to help in the way that I've been helped. I want to serve in the way that I've been served. And I want to just keep growing in that direction. And then you begin to apply the things that you love, the things you care about, that inspire you, that you either triumphed with or triumphed over or through. And then I just love how, like, in your story, it just turns like, I just want to help. Ultimately, you boil your very unique personal experiences and skills and passions down to something that can help, in my opinion, everyone. Can help everyone be not just better professionally or like more productive companies, but like you're saying, better humans to other humans and to themselves. And then that can then be translated in their way. They give them the tools to do that same thing that you were able to do, take their own unique personal experiences and passions, and then learn to tell stories themselves that they can connect to other people. And you get this exponential radiating effect where the pebble that you throw in the water ends up rippling out and, hopefully, ideally, in our intention, touching everyone in a good way, in a positive way.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people think that, oh, my story is not that interesting. There's not really, I haven't been through anything as dramatic or traumatic as like a brain tumor or some of it, but it's those stories that are not necessarily super outliers, that the more common experiences that are often the most powerful, because people empathize and connect with those who've had shared experiences with each other, and they can understand what you've been through. And so everyone has a compelling story about why they do what they do. If they're doing something that they enjoy, if they're in some kind of dead end job they're doing because just for the money, then there's some bigger issues there with their life. But if you're doing something that you enjoy, that you find joy in doing, then you have a powerful story behind what got you into that, and it's usually way deeper than oh, I like to help people. There's like an underlying why that if you really dig down and find what it is and share it with people, then you're going to connect on a much deeper level with the people you want to spend your time with, that are going to be your best clients, that are going to be the best employees. And it makes everything else about running a business or trying to grow a business way easier, because you're connecting with people on a much deeper level than you otherwise would be able to. And so it's one of the main things I work with people on with my coaching programs, is how to get more of that why, more of themselves. And instead of trying to be this perfect, like Instagram perfect, like everything's fine with my life, I have no problems, I'm like, oh, I'm great at what I do and there's nothing wrong with me, going for what I've learned is called Flawesome, where you still talk about your flaws and your insecurities and your problems, and you own those, but you also say, and because of those, I'm awesome at what I do. I'm a great person. I bring value to my clients and my connections and stuff, but I still worry about like my kids' future and my parents' ailing health and all. Like, you still have these real human emotions and experiences that everyone else experiences. That's what really connects us, is the shared challenges we've overcome, even if it's like two individual circumstances. Oh, I went through that sort of thing, or I had a similar issue when I was growing up, I totally get where you're coming from and why you believe what you believe. And that's what builds the connections. It's not the I'm awesome, I'm awesome, I'm awesome, I'm awesome, I'm awesome, which is what most businesses, most entrepreneurs put out there when in their marketing or their like social media. They try and it just comes across as unauthentic and fake. And so people, it turns people away. But if you talk about what like times you've messed up or and what you learn from it, and or things that you worry about, and that's why you're so committed to making a difference in the world, people are drawn to that, and it just makes you appear more human, and people are drawn to that because they want to have authentic human connections. With the pandemic, one of the things that showed us is that just the importance of having these strong human to human connections, and that requires being vulnerable. I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown, and she has a couple of great TED Talks about how just you got to be vulnerable, you got to put yourself out there. And unfortunately, society and social media has kind of trained people to put up these armor and walls and not be authentic. And you got to basically unlearn all that, or kind of break through all those that armor that people have put up, because there's definitely, we can see from just mental health issues and societal issues and political issues that we need to reconnect as human beings, because we are social creatures and we don't do well alone, and we need each other.
We do. And it's, first of all, I'm a sucker for a good portmanteau, and Flawesome. I am absolutely permanently borrowing that term. I love that term.
I can't remember where I stole it from, but I'm happy to have people pass it on, because it's so much better than trying to be perfect. Because
it gets right to the heart of the matter, like you were saying, like with this push, this urge, or this presentation of a flawless surface. It's just shiny, and there's nowhere to connect. There's nowhere to dock. There's nothing to grab onto. You try to latch on, you slide right off. But like the things that we think of as quote unquote flaws, these imperfections, there are vulnerability. They are where people can come in. They are where people can find us and actually connect and attach to us, which is scary. And I can get why there would be a temptation to protect yourself from that kind of vulnerability, because we have some wires crossed societally and individually. Like, I love vulnerability, and I love Brene Brown. I can honestly say that, like, listening to her and reading her, and I love the way that she speaks is even somehow better than the way that she writes. And she writes some of the most beautiful words that I've ever read about being human. But yeah, it's just that vulnerability, how necessary it is to not just be, you don't just open yourself and like, okay, world, do what you will with me. Like, there's a will and an intention behind true vulnerability that allows you to just connect with so many more people in such deeper ways. Gosh, I can talk about that for hours.
And there's just, like you mentioned, we have this, especially in the US, we have this misconception of that vulnerability is a sign of weakness. But if you see people, like, if you see someone like on stage, like opening up or being vulnerable, you go, wow, they have so much strength. But you think about doing it yourself, you go, no, I'm gonna be showing weakness. And there's like this cognitive dissonance between when you see other people doing it, you think it's great, but when you think about yourself doing it, you freak out. And I think that whole idea of just kind of leaning into that discomfort and doing it anyway and taking the risk, and it's absolutely worth it. And I think, if you're going to tell any story worth telling about yourself or your business, it requires being vulnerable. And it's something that I like, the whole mindset of understanding how people make decisions, how their brain works, how people like actually connect with each other, how relate, like the sort of relationship dynamics, how you what it takes to build trust, what it takes to hold people's attention. Those are all things that kind of work. The whole behavioral neurology I kind of work into my coaching, because if you're trying to tell the right story, you have to start by understanding who your audience is, so you know what is going to resonate with them. So if you just start talking about things you care about, you're going to miss all these opportunities, because it's not what's other people understand or care about. So it's just, there's all this stuff that's basically the core of it is empathy. Like, if I could snap my fingers and make everyone in the world as empathetic as humanly possible, but like casting that spell would kill me, I'd still do it, because it'd solve so many problems. But since magic isn't real, I'll use stories instead.
I don't know. You say magic, you say stories. I hear the same word. Honestly, I mean, I know magic from a certain perspective but I mean, stories do the work that magic
Yeah,
provides, I know we're just basically playing with words, and I like to think about that, but I often let myself forget how the effects of a well-told story that connects with people is insufficiently different from what the power of magic would look like if I didn't know about stories. It's like the
yeah,
way that people's minds and hearts and lives can be changed by a, a well-told 5-minute story sometimes, or however long it takes, that someone
yeah.
just connects with, and they see something about themselves in such a different way. And like you may never get to see it. You may never see the effects of that magic. You may never see like where that spell landed on someone, but you might have, by telling a story that just absolutely connect, by making yourself vulnerable and connecting with someone, or letting them connect with you. You might not even know that it happened, but their lives have been completely changed and set on a new path. And I don't know. That sounds like magic to me.
If you're trying to influence and change people's behavior and lives and and make an impact at scale, then stories are the best way to do that. If you can do some stuff one-on-one, like directly connecting with people, and your actions, if you have enough an audience, will have an impact. But if you're like a smaller kind of like entrepreneur or solopreneur doing a startup, something where you don't have a huge like following already, and you want to build one, then it's storytelling that's going to reach the most people, have the biggest impact and at scale, and is the most efficient way to influence other people's lives and have, in a positive way. And there's a great book I highly recommend. Basically, anyone in business read it. It's called "Predictably Irrational" by Dan Ariely. Read it with a dustpan and a broom so you can pick up pieces of your blown mind off the floor a couple times, because he prefaces the book saying, please use this for good, because this is the sort of things that people use to start cults and manipulate people. But it's basically revealing the kind of programming, the wiring of our brain, how we make decisions, how we behave, and how all these things that influence you every day, and most people have no idea that's how things are going when they're making decisions, or like and reacting to things. And if you're in business of trying to persuade people to buy something or sign up for something or do anything, knowing this is basically like almost like a cheat sheet. Because and there's it's one of the biggest takeaways is that as much as we'd like to think of ourselves as thinking beings that feel, we're very much feeling beings that occasionally think. We make all of our decisions, all of them are made with emotion. The lower brain limbic system makes the decisions, and then it pushes them up to the upper brain and says, okay, come up with logic and reason why this is a good decision. And then people think they made the decision, when really it's all emotion. And so often I see companies throw a bunch of facts and figures and data and information in their marketing at their audience, and they wonder why it's not working. Is because you're not talking to the right part of the brain that's making decisions. And if you want to connect with people and influence the behavior, emotional, powerful stories talk to the part of the brain that is like does threat assessment, it makes decisions, and it basically keeps you alive. And so there's all these things that if you're not including these sorts of things in your marketing messaging, you're not talking to the right part of the brain. And so there's all these things. A lot of it's from that book where I learned it, and it's one of those you read and go, holy crap, I've done that. Or I totally seen this happen. I noted that was going on. And then you gotta pause to sweep up your brain and stick it back in your head, because it's a great book, and it's something that I basically incorporate that in a lot of my like workshops and like webinars and stuff, because it's something that once you understand it, it makes everything else you're trying to do when it comes to influencing people way easier to understand. And it kind of, again, I just also continue this preface of just please use it for good, though, because it is like most people have no idea why they make the decisions they do or what's going on. And so it is kind of a cheat code in some ways.
Yeah, the powers of influence. It's like there's a couple of short steps from understanding how people think and how they're influenced into manipulating them, and then how you manipulate them. That's where your intentions come in. And yes,
Yeah.
use these powers for good, because they can and will change lives.
Yeah, and I'm probably not surprised to hear from after the brain tumor story that I'm very interested in how the brain works and all that sort of stuff. So I've been learning a lot about that, and so I love how I'm able to combine that with the storytelling part, because sometimes so often people think, oh, the storytelling is like a soft skill, or people think like empathy, having high EQ is a soft skill, and more people are saying that no, this is like foundational to success, to relationships, to being a good leader, to being a good, like, if you're trying to be a good human, you need these sort of skills, and it's no matter what you're doing, whether you're an employee or like the owner or you're a partner or like an executive, whatever, it just being better at storytelling just makes you a better human. And if you're trying to do anything like with growing yourself, this is a skill that you need to work on.
It's as predicted. I've done a decent job of looking up at the time. We've already been chatting for like 25 minutes. This has been fantastic. I kind of want to grab you again at some point in the future and just like have a much more far ranging conversation. This is fantastic. But before I let you go, I want to give you a chance to like talk a little bit about like where people can, well, I kind of two-part this question. Where can people just find out more about what you do, why you do it, how you do it, just like all the things that Squash and Stretch and you can provide to someone personally, professionally, in whatever role they're in. And then also where they can best connect with you. If you have a place online where you like start relationships with people you've never met before, if there's a social media that you prefer to be on, where you like connect with people. So yeah, how can people find out more and get to know you better?
Sure, yes, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. It's just Karl Pontau, Karlpontau. I think I'm the only one with that name on LinkedIn. So like send me like follow or send me a connection request. I'm in the middle of launching a whole new like offers and pipeline stuff, so I'll be posting stuff about that. And I have a storytelling workshop that's going to be basically an on-demand thing coming up soon. It's helping you tell the 4 types of stories that every entrepreneur needs to be able to tell to build those sort of strong human connections and create and convert them to different sorts of content for their business. And I'm launching a whole new program in January. It's a big collaborative program helping growth-minded entrepreneurs and motivators with align their brand messaging and scale their business in 2023, no matter what's going on with the economy. So if you're like that, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can send you a link to the application page for that, because I'm being very selective about who gets into that program. But these are sort of skills that in the messaging that it takes to grow your business in the modern 21st century. And so often it's overlooked, and at the person who does the overlooking, it just hurts them more than it helps.
Yeah, they dismiss it. They treat it as forgettable when really, I love that you use the word foundational, because that's what it is. It is foundational. It is where you'll plant your feet and take your next step. Yeah, is these kind of skills, and they are anything but soft, and they are very necessary if you want to be the kind of person you want to be in this world, and you want to get to the places you want to go. It's just necessary. I'm glad. It's one of the reasons why I love having this podcast. I'm glad that so many more people are realizing that. That's something that coaching, I feel like, serves very well, is just realizing how foundational, how necessary these kinds of skills, empathy, vulnerability, storytelling, connecting, are. And it starts with understanding yourself, figuring out your own story, how to be vulnerable and how to connect, and then being able to replicate that in others. I try to be a relentless optimist, and I think of it as one of the key virtuous cycles that we get to be a part of right now. So Karl, thank you for chatting with me. I'm like, my brain is going like 12 different directions, and I'm just like, I'm having to like really like pull back and not ask like follow-up questions, because like you're really fun to explore. And to the surprise of no one, I mean, you're essentially a professional storyteller, so it works. Yeah. It works great. But like, it's been great to talk with you. I'm probably gonna like slide into your LinkedIn DMs at some point in the not too distant future and have you back on maybe early next year as more things have launched, and we'll have another conversation like this, because I had a great time, and I love the way that you express ideas that I find to be so important to everyone. So thank you.
It's been so much fun. The time has flown by. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I will definitely welcome another invite to be a guest on your show.
All right. Well, thank you, Karl. Thank you to the audience for listening. Reach out, find out more about Karl. You definitely want to do this. Connect with them on LinkedIn so you know what's coming up next, what's happening now, what's coming in the future. And we will talk to you again very soon.